Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn, and I'm really excited about our guest over the next 3 days as my longtime friend, Jeff Rogers, is going to be with us. Jeff is one of the most talented people that I know. Not only is he a gifted photographer, he's traveled all over the world taking pictures and just has some beautiful photo books that I've used for Christmas gifts to bless people. And man, if you got somebody on your list, birthday, Father's Day, that's kind of hard to shop for, or you're looking for a unique special gift, highly recommend some of his books. A couple of photo books that I bought, My Father's World and Streams in the Desert, would make excellent Father's Day gift. But my favorite thing about Jeff, though, is that he is a faithful and devoted follower of Jesus Christ. And he's going to be hanging out with us today, tomorrow, and Friday. And we're going to be talking about prayer and healing and spiritual warfare. And, man, I'm so glad you're with us. And first of all, Jeff, just thanks for hanging out with us today, man.
It's always a pleasure to hang out with you. We have a good time.
Yeah, we most certainly do, brother. I always enjoy our time together and our coffees at Panera's and good stuff.
By the way, just so everybody knows, Greg was my business coach for my very first book, Kentucky Wide. And so I think I need to check. I think that was in 2006. So I'm just, I know we were friends or we acquaintances prior to that, but that's when we used to meet there at Denny's and once a month or whatever, and you helped me. And so now 6 books later, God's really blessed me and many other people through that. So I'll always be grateful for your help in getting the first one started.
Well, it was great to be a small part of that journey, and man, I rejoice with you. In fact, we partnered together last year with something called Hope for Hospitals.
Yeah, that's been really exciting. You and Angela Haar came up with the idea of, I put together these 2 more devotional, inspirational type books where my wife Missy and I get to travel a lot. And so I have a lot of these awe-inspiring images, and it's like, what are you going to do with them? And so the Lord just prompted me to put scriptures with these images, which is something I've always wanted to do anyway. And so they really help encourage people going through difficult time. And so I believe that through your radio program, I believe you guys help do over 50 books that were given to cancer patients and end-of-life type patients, and now also are going to some healthcare healthcare professionals that are really burned out, and we leave it up to the hospitals and their discretion as to who to give them to. So anyway, hope is there in their hands. It's in their heart also, but it's also a visual illustration in their hands. So I'm very grateful for your audience and for your heart for wanting to encourage people that are going through a really difficult time.
Well, we were blessed to be a part of it, and thank you so much for Angela's hard work. She really spearheaded it, so appreciate Angela Haar's servant leadership. Well, Jeff, we're going to talk some today about prayer, healing, a topic that, a lot of times people hear the word pray, they think of it as a 4-letter word, a bad word, because it's kind of intimidating, and the enemy's done a good job of deceiving us, but man, prayer's not that complicated, is it?
No, and the funny thing is that even people that do not identify as Christ followers, they still say that they pray. Now, I don't know who they pray to, but there's something innate within us, deep calls to deep, There's something in us that just cries out for a sense of wanting to be known and wanting to be heard. And so prayer is something that's really important, and it, like many other things, has been kind of hijacked and made strange or weird or used for wrong purposes or whatever. But our prayer life is, it's how can you have a relationship without talking to the one that you're in love with? Amen. So it's really important to do that. And then when you add the context or the layer on of healing, because I grew up, as I think you did, in a church environment where we believe God and believe His holy word, but we never really believed that God... Well, I'm not sure. I never believed, I was never taught that God actually really does anything at the prayer of someone else. And I believed that for much of my life until I saw someone healed at a Christian event at a conference one time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, what have I been believing all this time? Because I'm seeing something in front of me where, anyway, it's just interesting how that whole thing came together, and it just sort of began to open up my heart, my eyes as to really what is possible. And of course, we're all familiar with where it's on the internet or whatever. We're used to seeing abuses of things, and there's abuse about all kinds of things. And unfortunately, there's been excesses and abuses in this realm as well as everything else, but that doesn't mean that Jesus still doesn't want to use us to bring wholeness to people. So.
Well, most certainly he does, and I've seen healings too, and we're going to be talking about that more today and tomorrow, so glad that you're with us. But one of the things that I think is kind of a hidden treasure here in Central Kentucky that a lot of people don't know about, I've been blessed by this ministry, is the Wellspring Prayer Center. Can you share a little bit about what the Wellspring Prayer Center is?
Yeah, some like-minded friends and I started this almost 10 years ago now, and we were prompted and invited to start something in Madisonville, Kentucky. They have the prayer room, Main Street Prayer Room. No. Anyway, Main Street Prayer Room. Prayer on Main Street, whatever it was. Anyway, Barbie and Rush Hunt had invited me to start one here. And honestly, at that time, I was still checking out healing prayer and kicking the tires, and there are some people I knew and things I'd seen that seemed a little extreme for me, particularly coming from where I came from, a background of not having that whatsoever, and I didn't want to be associated with those kind of people. I'm sorry, it's probably pride driven more than anything, and so I was invited to start this here and said no, and then we were talking a little bit later, and as I was talking with Barbie and Rush on the telephone, they said, well, it's like 45 minutes. They said, well, can we pray? And I said, well, sure. So she began praying for me, and she began praying some of the, it was like verbatim, some of the things that the Lord had been speaking to my heart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. I need to get real. I need to seriously consider this. So I knew when I hung up the phone, I'd be saying yes. But of course, I wanted to share it with my wife, Missy, at the same time, who also happens to be an emergency room physician. And so the motto in our house is the best of Jesus and the best of medicine. So we said, yes, we would like to do this, found some other friends in ministry at various places. And so Madisonville came here to us to train us because, I don't know about you, but I've never sat in on a sermon before growing up as a kid. One, about healing prayer, and secondly, how do you do it? What's the nuts and bolts? How do you actually do this? It's not that God's a formula, but you want to have some kind of structure behind it, so that you honor people and that you love people and that they feel loved, because that's probably the most important thing. Which is, sorry, I'm going to go off on a rabbit trail, but the people that we have seen, literally hundreds and thousands of people that we have seen being healed from a variety of things, and we'll get into what some of those categories are. The biggest thing that I'm always just so touched by is that people just can't believe, they're just so, once they're healed, they're just overwhelmed with God's love. It's like they can't believe that God really loves them enough to actually bring healing to their body or to their heart, whatever the case may be. And so it's just really a beautiful thing. It's not just being relieved of rotator cuff pain or problem in a back or with a knee or something, but it's that Jesus actually loves them enough and the pain that they've been carrying and walking around in for a long time, or thoughts of suicide, or a lot of the brokenness in people's hearts that you can't see, that the Lord loves them enough to heal that and to take that away. It's just really overwhelmed by God's mercy and by His love.
Well, it's such a beautiful thing. The Wellspring Prayer Center, located here in Lexington. I've gone a couple of times, and during some seasons of my life where needed some healing.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
We live in a broken world.
Absolutely. And people talk about mental health and, prayer, and Wellspring Prayer Center could really help you if you're struggling mentally, emotionally. And, one of the things I think people, ask him, Jeff, does God still heal today?
For a lot of years, I would have said no. But up until about 15, 16, 17 years ago, with this new awareness, and I've been a student as well as a practitioner ever since that time. And so it's just unbelievable the amount of healings that are taking place now at this very moment. And for those that are more left brain oriented, I'm more of a pastor's heart, right brain oriented. I know a lot of pastors are left brain too, but there's a couple of really amazing books. Lee Strobel had a very famous book called Case for Christ, and a movie was made about it and all of that, and it's really a beautiful thing of this journalist story that was a skeptic coming to faith in Jesus, which is really a wonderful story. But he wrote a follow-up book called The Case for Miracles. and it's absolute crickets about that particular book, And so in that book, he talks about documented healings and why God does what he does and how he does. And then also just a few miles down the road here, Dr. Craig Keener. I've always heard of him, but bought one of his most recent books. And let's see, what is the name of his book? I'll get to he's got another book on healing. It's on another one of our talks that I want to talk about, but it's documented incredibly well. And so you just see, you have, for instance, one of the very first healings that we had at Wellspring that we had prayed for. And let me back up just a little bit. We have teams of people, teams of 2 or 3 that gather together. As a group, we gather together, and then someone signs in like at a doctor's office, and they fill out a clipboard about this is what their need is. And then this is not a public prayer session, but they go into a room with 2 or 3 prayer professionals. They're people that are just like you and me from all different churches here in town that all identify as followers of Jesus and are totally sold out on him. So we're very orthodox in our Apostles' Creed and Nicene Creed and all those creeds and things like that. And so then we have a chance to pray for them about whatever their private issue is or whatever their concern is. And then there's a time of prayer, and generally it's about our typical sessions, maybe 20 to 30 minutes. And so it's a very intimate time together. And many times when people come in looking for prayer for one thing, it's actually because of something much deeper. We look for roots, not fruit. So instead of you just saying, well, I just feel grumpy today, instead of going, we try to drill down by asking questions and praying with them and just asking the Lord to bring something else. What could this be from? What's going on? Well, come to think about, my dad really struggled with this issue as well. And so we address and pray for generational healing, for just as we have physical DNA. The reason you and I are so good looking and have as much hair as we do is because of our parents. And but just like with physical DNA, there's spiritual DNA. And a lot of that spiritual DNA is really awesome if we come from families that raised us in the church and really love the Lord. But a lot of people have negative kind of bad fruit that they didn't really ask for. It's just part of the package. And so we just ask the Lord to break off or to cut off the bad spiritual DNA and to invite Jesus into that place. Like, for instance, since it's come to mind, I'll just tell you about that. I love my dad. He was well respected in the community, and he, like everybody else, had struggles. And one of those things was he was just kind of a bitter person. He was people liked him, and he was an awesome man and business owner, but he just he had bitterness. And I realized at the same weekend that I'd seen this nurse that was healed by someone that had never prayed for anybody before. This lady had been healed at that particular time. And they had us do a generational thing, fill out your generational tree. And that was one of the things that I'd put on my sheet that my dad had struggled with or that I had seen. And so at the end of that weekend, I realized that it was just totally gone. Before, I'd always felt like I had a cloud over my head, wasn't good enough, couldn't ever work hard enough, couldn't please anyone enough, and just felt like just kind of grumpy sometimes. And I'm a pretty upbeat guy most all the time, but a lot of times I would just feel this sadness, and I just didn't understand why. Well, after that weekend of praying about those generational influences, it left and it's never come back. So I'm not saying I never have a bad day. It's not very often that I do, but I'm not saying I'm immune from that. But that was just a nuts and bolts thing of where my father struggled with bitterness along with other things. But that bitterness and that cloud over my head was just completely taken away. So through prayer.
Wow, really, really powerful stuff here. We're talking with Jeff Rogers with Wellspring Prayer Center. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I'm so glad that Jeff's going to be with us for some more programs. So I hope you'll join us again tomorrow as we're going to continue talking about prayer and healing. For Jeff Rogers, I'm Greg Horn. We'll see you tomorrow on Hope is Here.